I gotta say, it's a real honor to be asked to interview Gary Tomkins, who has done so much. I've researched so much of what you've done just recently and was shocked. You worked on Terrorhawks. I mean, how cool is that?
Yes.
Was that your first job in the business?
No. My first job, really, I was so fortunate that I was able to do work experience on The Empire Strikes Back. My first kind of little kind of meeting with Lucasfilm, I guess, because my father was the art director on that. And during the school summer break, I went in and did 6 weeks working in the art department, which was a pretty cool introduction, I would say, to working in the movie.
So was that the point in your life at which you knew art directing was the thing that you wanted to do, or had you previously been involved because of your father?
Yeah, I think I'd always, because there was always an awareness of it, because both my father and my uncle were art directors, there was always an awareness that such a job existed. And, you know, I was always into drawing and model making and that kind of thing, which are both elements of working in the art department. I think, you know, these days with all the behind the scenes stuff and DVD extras and stuff on the internet, there's an awareness that such a job, like working in the film industry and working in the art department, such a job exists. Back then, you know, I was really fortunate that I had family in the business, and they kind of introduced me that, you know, this is something that it is possible. And, you know, I went away and studied and joined the industry that way.
So many people watching us now having a chat, they'll all watch movies. They'll love the Star Wars movies, as you know, and many, many more. And they'll all watch the end credits of the movies. And I don't know about you, but I always get asked, what's a best boy? What's a this? What's a that? What's an art director?
Okay, well, every art department is headed up by a production designer, and he has overall vision for what the sets, props, basically the look of the film, what you see on screen, and to a certain extent, you know, visual effects. And it's the production designer who, along with a team of concept artists, will come up with the sort of broad strokes, what the film is going to look like, the set design. They will do sketches, they will do concept art. Once those have been kind of approved by the director, the producers, the DOP, all the sort of interested parties, then the process would be an art director would take on that set and start to produce a set of working drawings like an architect would. And those working drawings initially would be used to make a card model for, again, the director to look at, DOP, have a look, take the walls out, can we make it wider, taller, you know, whatever. And then once everyone is happy with it, the role of an art director is to do a full set of working drawings, architectural drawings, if you like, which will go on to be given to the carpenters, the plasterers, and the enormous kind of construction crew that is always on a movie. And, you know, beyond that, the art director will go down to the stage, have a look at the set as it's progressing, you know, be the eyes and the ears of the production designer. If they can't get there, if there's any concerns, then you'll report back to the production designer. And you're really the sort of conduit between the designer's vision that, you know, would be on a piece of concept art and the final thing that appears on screen.
So how much involvement do you have with individual, the original people that did the original concept art, and how much of there is compromise for practicality and for all sorts of other reasons why filming and so on? And is that something you would decide to do, or?
Normally the concept artist, you know, a good concept artist would respect the restrictions that a set might have, but, you know, equally they can really have a bigger vision with the advent of visual effects, certainly of recent years. You know, you can have a much broader picture of a universe, if you like. The fact that, you know, that is a piece of concept art, but the set is only that much and the rest is visual effects, you know, it gives a lot more, you know. And, you know, many years ago with matte paintings and glass shots and all that, you know, there's always an opportunity to build, to design outside of what you're going to build as a set. But having said that, you know, I think a lot of certainly designers and most concept artists would appreciate what the parameters are of the set build that we're expected to come up with, which obviously has budgetary restrictions and, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, the art director can be part of that. I think, you know, the white card model stage is always something that we do. It's very basic, you know, in the age of VR and that kind of thing that we also employ in the art department, but actually there's no substitute for making a accurate scale model in white card, which you can look at. And, I've even known designers, when the director hasn't liked it, get a bread knife out and start cutting through the cardboard and saying, okay, is that better? I mean, it's something so tactile that, everyone can look at it. They know what they're looking at. We often employ a little lipstick camera, which, as the name implies, is a tiny little camera with lenses that match filming lenses that you can put inside the white card model. So, as I say, it's a tactile thing, even though we still would perhaps do VR and walkthroughs and stuff in conjunction with the visual effects department. There's something really nice about having a model, which then, will tell everybody the extent of the full size built set.
And are you enjoying the fact that now your imagination can be let run much more wild with the advance of VR and all the wonderful green screen and different things that you can incorporate into your sets to make your sets bigger or seem bigger on screen, as you said?
Yeah,
the small, but you can paint the bigger picture. Is that something that?
I mean, it is wonderful. The technology that is available to filmmakers now is fantastic. Once upon a time, as I said before, it's glass paintings, matte painting of miniatures. I love miniatures when we used to do those, but sadly they're a sort of dying art now with so much CGI. I do think there is a danger of, because you can extend a set so enormously, then you extend it and then you extend it again, and then you have a you build a CGI X-wing fighter. Okay, let's have 50 X-wing fighters and they can all be flying through. Actually, sometimes you have to rein it in a little bit. Just because you can go mad and let your imagination run wild, I think sometimes you need to kind of just rein that in and say, actually, it would be better. Less is more sometimes.
It's clear, just talking to you right now, that you have this incredible passion for what you do and for film. What was the first film? What really inspired that? I mean, I know your family was in film, but what was the first film you saw that really, started to get the pulse going, the heart beating a little faster? And
God, that's a really hard question. I mean, I think I've got to say Star Wars because of what we're talking about. That how was it? How old was I? I was probably about 14 when I saw Star Wars, and that was fantastic.
You ever influenced by the older guys like Harryhausen and all those sort of, Jason and the Argonauts and all those wonderful films with miniatures? And
yeah, I mean, they were always there. I think, growing up, I don't think I can't recall going to the cinema so often. I saw a lot of movies on TV, those things that you've just mentioned. And I think also for myself, a lot of TV shows like Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, all of those Jerry Anderson shows. For me, growing up, those were the big shows. Those were the influences. I had the Dinky toys. I had all the, an early form of one of the first forms of merchandising. You see what was available for Star Wars fans now. Well, it all kind of started back, in Jerry Anderson's time. So, of course, many years later, when I went and worked with Jerry on Terrorhawks, that was at a very early stage of my career. To actually work with someone who I had grown up seeing the shows was fantastic.
Yeah, that must have been like a dream come true to actually, be working with the guy that kind of inspired you, as it were.
And he was very modest about it all. It's like, oh, I don't know, he really wasn't a big kind of showman. He was a very modest, very lovely guy, and it was a real pleasure to work with him, I must say.
I think you often find that with most people who are very, very successful, they are generally quite modest about what they do, and they just sit back and they just do it, and it's just magic happens. What are your ambitions moving forward? What would you like to be doing? I mean, is the art department, would you ever like to direct or
no, I mean, I love the art department. I think, any of us that come into the art department, it's through a love of drawing and, seeing. The wonderful thing about the art department is you can go in on a film on the first day. It's a clean white sheet of paper, and you have a designer and he comes in and he puts a few ideas down, and then you develop those ideas, and then within a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, you start to see sets go up, the excitement of that. And then the sets are built over a period of time. And then on the first day of shooting, you go onto the stage and there is this incredible thing that didn't exist physically a few months previously and didn't even exist in anyone's imagination a few months before that. And, I think that's the art department, I always say, is the best department on a film, because I think the opportunity to be creative from the top down is a wonderful thing.
And you create the stage for the performers to perform on. You create that first, which is amazing. Are there any films that you've looked back on that you've worked on and you thought, I wish I'd done that differently, or is that just all of them? And because people are always hyper.
I think we're all our own biggest critics, but I think it's a measure of a success of a film if you can sit down and watch it and not think about, oh, if only. Well, yeah, I mean, I can think of one example on one of the Harry Potter films. There was probably 999 people out of 1,000 wouldn't notice it, but it was a bit of leading work on a window, and the leading for the glazing on the window wasn't quite what I had intended, and for whatever reason it got passed and it got shot on, and every time I see it I cringe, but it's only because I remember thinking at the time, why was that done like that? And it slipped through the net. But if that's the worst thing in 40 years working in the business, then hopefully I've got away with it.
That's a testament to your professionalism and your desire to be perfect. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. You let slip just before the interview, and I can't let this go. You have actually worked, as you said, you worked on Empire Strikes Back, but you worked on the 3 different trilogies, which is pretty impressive.
Yes, that is.
Empire Strikes Back, you said you were a kid. How old were you?
I think I was 16 on that. So it was kind of between school and going to college. And it was about 6 weeks in the summer, going in, helping out my father and Michael Lamont, who was one of the other art directors on it. And one of the things that I really remember, it was during the time of the development of the Snowspeeder. And there was some concept art being done by Ralph. I met Ralph McQuarrie. He was working in the art department. Joe Johnson, and at the time they were just, these are, I think I was aware of them because the art of Star Wars had already come out, I think. So, I was aware that, hey, these guys are really cool, but, not that they hadn't reached the legendary status that they are now. And the Snowspeeder was being developed, and I think my father drew up the plans and elevations of it, which appears in the Star Wars Blueprints book. And it was down to me to make a little cardboard model of the Snowspeeder. So I like to kind of the claim to fame with all the millions of models of Snowspeeders that have been made over the years, from Lego to construction plastic kits. I probably made one of the very first Snowspeeder models. So if I claim to fame, then I'll take that one.
The next question clearly has to be, do you still have that model?
No. It was made, and it was added to a little polystyrene ice cave set that was being made in the art department, and they're all long gone, I'm sure.
Well, it's a great claim to fame, nevertheless. You mentioned you worked on the Harry Potter movies. Were they a very different thing to Star Wars, or a very different kind of?
Yes, absolutely. They worked with a wonderful designer, Stuart Craig, multi-Oscar nominated, multi-Oscar winning designer. In my opinion, one of the greatest designers that, certainly in the UK, if not the world. His vision combined with Joe Rowling's vision of the story just was a gift to anyone working in the art department, I think. And, he did beautiful sketches, beautiful illustrations, from which, as an art director, you just had all the information there. Combine that with books and research, and it was just such a pleasure to work on all of those films.
Yes,
and yeah, very good, of course. But
moving on to, we did Empire and you were 16. I have to say your work experience was considerably better than mine, and I'm not going to go into that right now, Gary. Then you said to me you worked on Phantom Menace.
Yeah. I was a draftsman on that. We did that at Leavesden Studios, which in latter times went on to house all the Harry Potter films. That was one of the first films that I worked at Leavesden there on. That was great fun. That was designed by Gavin Bouquet, who did the prequels. And I did lots of sets on that. Temple of the Jedi Council, I think, was one of them, which was a circular set. I always seem to get the circular sets. I don't know why. They're the most difficult ones to draw, because everything's going around and have to develop all the shapes. But that was quite a cool set to work on.
You shouldn't be so good at your job, clearly.
So so yeah, that was great fun, because of course on Phantom Menace, that was I think I'm right in saying the first film that George directed since Star Wars. I think.
Yeah.
Someone might correct me, but I think that was the case. So, you know, he was in the art department quite a lot of the time. And then the first day of shooting came around. I remember just thinking to myself, my God, this is the first time that George Lucas is going to be directing something here. And I don't know whether anyone else felt that it was such a big deal, but certainly for me, it's like, oh, this is quite a moment. This is, you know, almost history in the making. So that was quite cool.
Did you enjoy working with him and liaising with him as a director?
Yeah, I mean, he, you know, in my role as an as an art director, and particularly on that one as a draftsman, you didn't have a lot of dealings. You know, you would always be there. It's always the director and the production designer that have the conversations. As an art director, you often kind of listen in, but yeah, lovely guy. One of the things I remember, he was very excited. He came in one day and had this amazing new technology, and he wanted us all to watch the original Star Wars film, because there was something in there he wanted to show us, and it was laser discs, the 12-inch laser discs, and this laser disc player. And halfway through the movie, you had to turn it over.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, that's a measure of, you know, how long ago it was, but it was this wonderful thing that George has got this amazing thing and this really good quality. Really? What better quality than a VHS? Really? And sure enough, you know, there it was. Little did we know that we'd be watching movies on our phone in what seems like a very
20-some years later.
Yeah.
Not even really. And then you worked on The Force Awakens.
Yep. That was great, getting back, particularly on The Force Awakens, because it was the first time that we recreated a lot of the old sets, like the Millennium Falcon, and, you know, obviously we had all our heroes back, and, you know, that really was a very exciting time. You know, having been in the industry as long as I have, I don't often get starstruck as such, but, you know, when you're standing on the Millennium Falcon set and there's Chewie and there's Harrison, and you think, yeah, this is quite cool. This is a moment I'm just going to drink in, because I need to remember this for a future interview.
And I'm glad you saved it for me. I appreciate that. When you were 12 or 14 or whatever it was, when you first saw Star Wars, did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine that one day you would be actually where you were with Chewie?
No, of course not. I don't think anyone does. You know, even though I knew I kind of wanted to go to the film industry, no one knew that, you know, quite how the arc would go of making of the movies and all that. You know, I would have been happy just, you know, earning a living doing whatever. You know, even what some would describe as a silly little puppet film with Jerry Anderson.
I will not hear a bad word said about Terrorhawks or Jerry.
Well, the funny thing is, the influences on Terrorhawks were very much, when we made it, I worked with some brilliant people on that. Of note, Mark Harris, who is a terrific guy who worked with, funnily enough, he was on Empire Strikes Back with me. He was in a very junior kind of art department assistant role. He then came onto Terrorhawks with us, and we dressed a lot of the sets with influence from Star Wars. So what we call the Harry Lang panels, Harry Lang being one of the art directors on Star Wars, which is basically a black or a grey panel with white Letra-tape. Back in the day, there was a thing called Letra-tape, which was very fine tape, which you would put on and you would make the panel. So if you look at a lot of Terrorhawks episodes, particularly the latter ones, because I became the sort of designer of Terrorhawks after the first 2 episodes went out, I think, where Bob Bell, who was the designer, was moved up to a associate producer, and Jerry said, do you fancy, you know, carrying on doing some of the, it's like, well, I'm just a kid, what do I know? But, you know, the madness of youth, or whatever you like to call it. I said, yeah, fine. So we did, Mark Harris and myself, we did all these panels, you know, lovely little white lines, and if you look at some of the latter episodes, that's where that influence came from. Cut and dissolve to 30 years later, Mark Harris and I are on a set with J.J. Abrams putting white lines around panels. So there's a wonderful kind of circular nature of some
things never change.
Some things never change, except you can't buy
Oh no, that's a tragedy. That's not very.
Although, having said that, I think Mark did have some lecture tape left in his garage that had been there for 30 years since he.
But still was good and still worked. That's
some of it did stick.
So, working amongst all of these people and doing all of these things, what's been the real highlight? If you had to pick one moment or one movie.
Oh, so hard. Because everything, the beauty of the film industry and of the art department is how different everything is. So, as I said once before, standing on the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo and Chewie, we're home, the line, it's like, that's got to be a highlight. But equally, standing on some of the Harry Potter sets with all the kids and Alan Rickman, and those are fantastic memories. And I worked on films like Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, where we landed a helicopter in Trafalgar Square. It had never been done before, not even for an air ambulance, but the permissions were granted. We closed off something like 60 different bus routes. We closed off the Mall. We closed off all of these streets. And Tom arrives in a helicopter in Trafalgar Square. And he this is really quite cool. And there have been lots of highlights like that. Even to the extent that on a terrible film, we all have skeletons in our closets, but I worked on a film called Shanghai Surprise with Madonna and Sean Penn. And we went to...
Like that movie.
We went to Peckham Plunge Pools, which was this terrible old kind of public bar that's in East London, which we dressed, the magic of the art department, we dressed to look like a Shanghai sauna, where we took Madonna. And speaking to a lot of the old boys in there that used to go there for a wash. And so, what are you doing here, mate? Oh, well, we're designing it as a film set. Oh, who's the star? Well, it's Madonna. It's like, Madonna, come in here. And it's little moments like that is very very good to look back.
That was filmed in Peckham. I can't believe. Yeah. Especially, I need to watch that again now. The other thing, and I can tell that along your passion, you're quite modest about what you do, but you have you've been nominated 10 times and you've won 3 awards. You're so well thought of and well renowned. What's next? What's next for Gary Tomkins?
I don't know. I mean, I've just recently finished on Fantastic Beasts 3, so it's back to the Potterverse, having been in a galaxy far, far away for a few years after the last Harry Potter. So that's been really nice, because that's been back with Stuart Craig and his co-designer Neil Lamont, who was one of the supervising art directors on the original Harry Potter films, and also went on to design Solo and co-design Rogue One. So it's very much the same people that we work with time and time again. So yeah, that was really nice going back to work with Stuart, I must say, and getting back to the wizarding world. But as I said before, the beauty of this industry is you never know quite what is around the corner. And the first film I did, having done all the Harry Potter films, the first thing I did was Spielberg's War Horse. So suddenly, from being into Gothic architecture and castles and things, you're into doing research on World War I trenches and World War I tanks. And up until a few weeks before I started that, I didn't know that was going to happen. And then after that, you go and work on Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise landing helicopters in Trafalgar. So, and that is the absolute beauty. I don't know really what I'm going to be doing in 6 months' time, and part of that is really nerve-wracking, because we're a freelance industry, and over the last 40 years, there's been some sort of ups and downs of being busy or not. Fortunately, at the moment, the industry is incredibly buoyant. It's busier than I think it ever has been, the British film industry, despite all the best efforts of COVID to screw everything up. We're every major studio is expanding. The advent of Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon. Everyone loves coming to the UK to make their movies, and long may it last. So whatever I might be going on to, I'm just hoping it'll be a fun project with some lovely people and some nice challenges.
So before I wind this up, and I really appreciate, as we all do, you giving up your time to spend with us and tell us some of these wonderful stories. I'm going to finish up and make it a little lighter. If you saw yourself as a Star Wars character, Now, not which one would you want to be, but which one do you think you're closest to as a person?
Oh, that's impossible to answer. I should have had some warning for that. I don't know.
If I'd have gave you warning for that, you wouldn't give me the correct
No,
answer.
exactly. Exactly. I maybe Luke Skywalker. I don't know. If pushed,
That would be the.
maybe you have to ask someone else and not myself.
Well, you see, I think actually the Luke Skywalker thing works because you were the young pup that went along to the movie and the master. So in some respects, I can see that. Listen, Gary, it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Oh, you too.
I hope people have learned something about you and about what art directors do, but I've also just enjoyed, as I have, talking to you this afternoon. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
And thank you for celebrating this anniversary with us. And hopefully one day I'll get a chance to meet you, buy you a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Thanks ever so much, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.